All right, boys and girls, I'm reviewing the work that you had on Monday, subtracting with unlike denominators. Now, this should have just been a review, but I had a lot of people get wrong answers, and so I wanted you to make sure you're watching, you're paying attention to the review for subtracting with unlike denominators. Unlike multiplication, you have to have a common denominator when you add and subtract, and so the first job you always have to do is find a common denominator before you can do anything. So, one way you can find a common denominator is by multiplying. In this case, you could do 4 times 14, and that'll give you a common denominator. But the other way is to find that least common multiple, the smaller number that'll still work for both of these numbers. This way you have less simplifying in the end. So again, I could do 4 times 14. That'll work. But I also know my factors of 14 are 14. 1 times 14 is 14. I also know 2 times 14 is 28. And I know that 4 times 7 is 28. Therefore, 28 will work for both of them. And of course, it's minus, not addition. So, what did I do to the 4 to get it to become a 28? 4 times what is 28? Well, 4 times 7. And the rule is whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. So if I multiply the bottom by 7, I have to multiply the top by 7. 2 times 7 is 14. Okay? Over here, what are you doing to the 14 to get it to become that 28? 14 times what? 14 times 2. Whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. 5 times 2 is 10. Now you have common denominators. You've renamed them with common denominators. Now, when you subtract, remember, you just bring the denominator over. You subtract the numerators. 14 minus 10 is 4. Of course, then you had to look, can this be simplified? Do they share a greatest common factor? And they definitely do, of course, which I know that right here, their greatest common factor is 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. And 7 divided by 4 is, 28 divided by 4 is 7. And so the answer is 1/7. Okay, so I just want to show you, the other way you could have done it was to multiply 14 times 4. That would have given you 4 times 4 is 16, regroup, 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1 is 56. You could have used 56 also as your common denominator because doing 4 times 14. Okay, then in doing that, you'd have to do 2 times 14, which of course is 28, and 14 times 4, which means you have to do 5 times 4, which is 20, becomes 8 over 56, which of course still becomes 1/7. My point is, either way works, whether you found the least common multiple or you multiplied your denominators. Either way, so long as when you simplify, you get the same answer, 1/7. All right, let's take a look at our next problem that you had on that Google form. Okay, we'll use red for this one. Your next one was 7/8 minus 2/4. That was the next problem that you had. Now, of course, I couldn't use 32 as a common denominator. That's fine, okay? If you choose to do it that way, by multiplying it like that, that means you did 8 times 4 on the bottom, which means you have to do that on the top to get your new numerator. 7 times 4 is 28. And since you did the times 8 over here, whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do the top times 8. 2 times 8 is 16. And now looking at it, 28 minus 16. And of course, remember guys, if you don't know, you just have to come work it out. 28 minus 16. Okay? 12 over 32. Now, of course, that can be simplified. You need to find the greatest common factor of both 12 and 32, and the greatest common factor is 4. I have that cheat sheet you guys can use. You can always look up that same sheet online and find it. 12 divided by 4 is 3. 32 divided by 4 is 8. Your answer was 3/8. Just to show you the least common multiple way, can you make the little one into the big one? Yes, 4 can be made into an 8. So this is just another option. You could have had 7/8 and kept him. And then what do you do to the 4 to get it to become an 8? Times 2. Whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. And see, when you do it that way, it just takes less steps, but same answer. Okay, problem number 3. You had 1/2 minus 3/10. Let's assume you do it the multiplier denominators way. 2 times 10 is 20. Therefore, they're both going to become a fraction with 20. Remember, you're subtracting, not adding. If you multiply this by 10 to the bottom, then you're going to have to do that to the top. 1 times 10 is 10. If you do this times 2 to the bottom, you're going to have to times 2 to the top. 3 times 2 is 6. And of course, 10 minus 6 is 4. Denominator stays the same. That could be simplified. Greatest common factor, which you should know by now, is 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 20 divided by 4 is 5. So that gives you 1/5 as an answer. Option number 2, least common multiple. I can make the 2 into a 10. That means he can stay 3/10. To get the 2 to become a 10, you're multiplying by 5. Whatever you do the bottom, you do the top. So this becomes 5. 5 minus, 2 times 5 equals 2/10. Simplify, they're both divisible by 2 equals 1/5. Lost myself for a second there. Okay, either way, look, same answer. Whether you go least common multiple way or you multiply your denominators, make sure you simplify, same answer. And the last one that you had on your Google form was 5/6 minus 3/8. So if you want to multiply your denominators to find the common denominator, that's 6 times 8 is 48. That means they can both be renamed into fractions with a 48 as a denominator. Remember, you're subtracting. If you're 6 times 8, if you're multiplying by 8 at the bottom, you're multiplying by 8 at the top. That gives you 40. Over here, if you multiply by 6 to the bottom, that means you multiply 6 to the top. That gives you 18. 40 minus 18 is 22. Denominator stays the same. And then again, this can be simplified. In this case, 22 only has, besides from 1 and 22, 2 other factors. 2 times 11. That means they're both divisible by 2. 22 divided by 2 is 11. 48 divided by 2 is 24. Your answer was 11/24. Okay, so, and there's a least common multiple way you could have gone to as well with 24. I'll just show you that. 6 and 8, if you look at their multiples, they both have a common multiple of 24. I know that 6 times 4 is 24. So if I do this times 4 to the bottom, I have to do 5 times 4 up to the top. I know that 8 times 3 is how I get to 24. So if I do this times 3, I have to do this times 3. And look, it's the same answer. So however you want to do it, it doesn't matter. But again, you should have the same answer. You always have to remember to simplify your answer. So just a quick review. When you're adding and subtracting fractions, you must have a common denominator first. Change your numerators. Subtract your numerators across. Bring the denominator right over, and always look to see if you need to simplify. All right, the next Google form with subtracting review, I expect to see better scores. You can do it.